If your local store doesn't carry Fragments of Silicon, homemade is fine.
Greetings and salutations to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon European interviews. Good news, Petty Fan is back in the saddle full time.
Yay!
So he is here along with Gollix, who is significantly less grumpy this week. So, anyway, so given that it's a Euro show, we'll get right into the interview. Joining us this week are Bo and Cyrille from Guard Crush Games.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. How are you both doing today?
Fine, thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Nice morning in Montreal.
That's good to hear. And you guys are located in Canada, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, in Montreal, Canada. Yeah. So it's the morning for us. Less the morning that you, I guess.
Yes. We're mostly based on the East Coast. We got a Midwesterner here as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's a lot of companies involved in Streets of Rage 4, so it does get a bit hard to delineate who is where.
Yes, everyone is kind of everywhere. So it's us, we're Guard Crush. So we have a little bit of experience in beat 'em up because we did Streets of Fury and Streets of Fury EX before. Mm-hmm. And while we take care of the programming of the game, so you have Lagarigue, that is a company that did the Wonder Boy remake. I don't know if you played that game.
The what remake?
Wonder Boy Dragon's Trap.
No, I didn't play that particular Wonder Boy. We played the other one.
Both of the other ones.
Well, the Monster Boy.
The Monster Boy, what, the modern one, or?
There were two Wonder Boy projects of recent vintage. Yeah, yes. You're talking about the Lizard Cube, Wonder Boy, and the Dragon's Trap.
Exactly.
Yeah, we played Monster Boy in the Cursed Kingdom, which was from FDG.
We did talk about the Dragon's Trap at least before.
Right. I'm just saying we've never talked to to Lizard Cube about that one.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's so Lizard Cube, they taking part. They doing the art for the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's why the art style is pretty similar to Wonder Boy, to the remake, and we have .mu that is a publisher, and they do basically everything else on production. They take piratage, they do design, level design, and also they take care of working with musicians and sound people. So they do a lot of stuff.
Well, I suppose the obvious question in this menagerie is, what is the communication like with Sega, if there is any? Is that all on .emu's hands, or have you talked to like Sega people yourselves?
We haven't talked ourselves with Sega people. It's .mu takes care of it. What Sega does is basically they take care that they ensure that the license stays on track, that we don't do something totally silly with the characters or something like that. So they take care of that, and they follow the project so that we don't so that we stay on track with the license. So yes, it's .mu that takes part in that.
About what I expected, since they're the publisher, and would have like the most direct line. But before we further go underway with Streets of Rage 4, it's probably best to get to know you two better. That is to say, what both got you interested in both video games on a personal and a professional level?
Okay, so I may start. So I'm Cyrille. So I'm the president of Lagarigue Game. I'm the main programmer on the game. My personal interest in video games, it's lately it's being a lot of From Software games. So I'm that kind of player that almost play only From Software game or indie games and retro gaming mainly. And I also play a lot of beat 'em up because I'm a beat 'em up developer. So I played a lot of Guardian Heroes before doing Streets of Fury, and also play Streets of Rage, of course. And before I worked in the AAA industry, I work on Assassin's Creed games mainly. So yes, that's that's my curriculum vitae. I think Bo, you can say.
I'm Bo. I'm mostly graphics and tools programmer on that project. Other than that, when I grew up, my parents didn't want any video game console or things like that. They were more in the you better get outside and play. So I've been overcompensating since doing video games actually. We got a home computer, a PC, when I was 15, and there were no good games running on it. So I started programming them myself, and I haven't stopped since. So it's been like over 20 years that I'm programming games for fun and for professionally. I've been also a game designer. I was in the mobile industry for quite a long time. And before that, I've done also some indie projects. And then I heard about that project when Cyrille taught me about Streets of Rage. I was all in. And I really think I'm here in big part for the tools because I think it's that part in our industry that's where we can really push the thing forward. Better specific tools to make development quite easier, and something that we tend to forget with already built solutions like Unity and Unreal and stuff like that, where you've got tools but that aren't specific. So you end up wrestling against the tools instead of really using them. That's a bit on me.
Yeah, that's the part that you guys don't see about game development is that, and that's very important. It's all the tool we make to be able to make the game.
So. Usually there's twice the effort put on the tools more than the game itself. But no one gets to see that.
It is one of the hidden features under the hood. It's come up on the show time and again, certainly. And I suppose the question is, what sort of tool set are you using on Streets of Rage 4? Is this being developed in Unity?
No, it's all custom. The base is XNA. You probably can talk more about that, Cyrille.
Yeah, so we use the base of the toolchain is so XNA, FNA, monogame, all that is the same library. It's been created by Microsoft and dropped some time ago, but now a lot of people have did the open source implementation. And it's technology that's been used for Celeste, for Towerfall, for Stardew Valley, and also Rogue Legacy and other game. Also Terraria use this technology. So quite a lot of game use it, and it's really we use mostly open source technology. So mainly we have XNA and we have IMGUI, that is a library used to do tools. That's beginning to be very widely used in the industry. And also for the sound engine, we use Wise. So that's the only part that is not open source about our tech stack.
Is that .emu's proprietary thing, or is that yours?
Ours.
No, Wise? No, it's another company called Audiotic Kinetics that is in Montreal, and it's been used in a lot of games. So
We're talking about Wise?
I think so, maybe.
Yeah, the part that you mentioned that wasn't open source.
Oh yeah, Wise. Yeah, it's the standard in the industry. Every big games are using it. It's a really complete audio solution. You can do tons of crazy stuff with your sound. Things that you don't notice because it's the sounds. It's the nature of sound. You don't notice it unless it's wrong. But it can help you have like tons of subtle effects. Have all the sound effects and music really integrate well together down to the mix. And
to have dynamic music and dynamic mix. So because the sound is very sound and music is very very important part of Streets of Rage. So yes, we wanted to use a very good engine to be able to push the envelope.
Makes sense. And Monogame, not the most common engine that we've encountered, but we've encountered it before.
Yeah.
And was there any particular reason why you picked that tool set to use over, the more common ones?
It's a historical reason. Is that like I said, I made a game called Streets of Fury a long time ago, and the first version was an Xbox Live indie game that was out on Xbox 360. And we used the code base from Streets of Fury to have something to start doing Streets of Rage. So we had something very fast in-game, character hitting each other. So that's mainly the reason.
But even if we had to choose again, it would probably be it, because it's a really thin layer that is portable and that is C#. C# helps us to really be very fast when programming. It's almost instant compiling compared to C++, which is more or less of a nightmare. C# is really a big plus. And for a game like that, we don't need big solutions like Unity or whatever, because we really wanted to be in control of every part of the game, be it the renderer or the gameplay or.
You lose a little bit of control when you lose control, a lot of control when you use a pre-made engine. And if you use an ET or Unreal, it comes with its engines that are done for 3D mainly. So you have 90% of the engines that you carry with you that's useless to you. And also it helps in a more creative way. It helps to not have everything that comes by default, because if you see an Unity game, you see that the particle effects are always done a little similar, or some effects you'll see in several games because it's an asset. And if you don't take one of these engine, you're going to have a game that looks more unique. Maybe an engine that would have fit would have been Game Maker. I don't know.
That is not so much a quirk of Unity. It's a feature. Unreal, stock assets and all that.
Yeah, it's really good though, those things to get something up and running really quickly. But it's in the long run that in the end, the pre-made assets, you don't want it like 2 years later into the project, you want your own thing.
But it's really a kind of a philosophical question. I think that it's several. There's no one way to develop games, and
Yeah, for sure.
and there's not one that is better than the other. It's just that we like to work like this. It's more, and each one has its advantages and its drawback. So, like doing your engine or using existing engine and each engine also. So I think there's no best way to work. I think it's really a matter of taste, and it's gonna feel different. I think it's gonna feel. I still believe it's depending on the engine. If you do your custom engine, and depending on the engine you choose, it's gonna feel different. You're gonna feel it. Myself, I feel it, but
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You wanted a level of control that the big engines could not afford.
Exactly.
exactly.
And exactly what is that level of control applied to Streets of Rage 4 here?
Well, we could say that, for example, with the big engines, you could have a frame of delay, of latency that could creep up somewhere, and you have no control over it. And for Streets of Rage, it was from the start very, very important to have very, very good reactivity. The controls have to be super tight, so we can't afford a frame of latency or whatever. So it's an example.
Yeah, for example, we custom the rendering exactly how we want. So we were able to do effects that maybe we wouldn't have done on other engines. And also it's for the tool chain. So it's controlling exactly how the game works, allow us to have games that we can play and edit at the same time. We can edit every part of the game while playing it. So that allow us to be very precise and to be very fast in editing. For example, the characteristics of the moves, the properties of the characters, and be able to iterate and to control everything. Really allow us to be very fast. And we need that because we have several playable characters, a lot of enemies that have all their moves with their properties, and we're a small team, so we.
And it ends up just being the quality you can deliver. If you have to stop the game, recompile, or export or whatever, and restart, it's not instant. And even a few seconds of like not able to tweak and see live your changes, it will mean that you can just scrub a slider to get that exact thing that you still don't know that you need as a value, but that's what you're looking for. So yeah, the iteration time really needs to be low if you want a great quality.
And a small engines, because the engine is smaller in terms of complexity, so a small engine helps to do that. Because you have less complexity, because you only have the feature you want. So you can do any modification without having all the complexity of the engine, of the big engine. So yes, that's really a trade-off between having stuff that are already done and doing everything yourself, but then controlling it fully.
I get what you're saying, especially with a game like Streets of Rage 4 here. It is important to keep everything very tight and compact because, this is a game where every frame is going to matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to tell that it's a 60 FPS chess, this kind of games. So it's really about placement and doing 60 decisions per second. So yeah, everything have to be very predictable and precise.
Indeed, and how do you find working with this particular art style? Because this isn't, your 16-bit pixel art. This is hand-drawn stuff, which is actually a lot different in terms of frame pacing and frame animation.
Yeah, it's great to work with Ben for that.
So Ben Fiquet, that is the art director.
Yeah. He's done an amazing job at animating those characters, and it's great. It's a dream come true. Somehow, when we were younger, we were looking at games in the 16-bit era, and what we had in mind was more or less that, like an animated movie or TV show, but interactive.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for. And in terms of how we work with it, I think it's harder to work in 2D HD than in pixel art, because pixel art is more forgiving, and it's more precise, but it's more forgiving. We have bigger texture to work with, so in technical terms, this have to be taken into account when you work on a pixel art game on modern hardware. You don't care about texture size because you have all you need, and largely here we have a very big background and stuff like that. I think what it brings is that it's more precise in terms, of course, it's more precise in terms of gameplay, in terms of where the characters are, and you have more details. So we kept the same size of the character in the screen as the old games. So the characters take the same size in the screen. We just have more screen real estate on the left and on the right of the screen, of course, because it's 16 by it's widescreen. But in terms of animation, it's not that different. We have more frame of animation, but it's still a 60 frame per second game. So it's not 16. It's 16 frames per second, but every drawing does not take only one frame, because it would be too many drawings. And it would not even look better if it was one drawing per frame. So it's not uneven. So maybe a frame is gonna a drawing is gonna take 10 frames. Maybe a drawing is gonna take only 2 frames. So it really is a difference between when we alternate between drawings and but the characters themselves move in terms of position at 60 frames per second. I don't know if I'm clear enough.
I think I'm getting what you're saying. It's more precision, and it's not that different from pixel art, if I'm understanding this correctly.
It's not very far from pixel art, but what it allows us is, and even requires us, is better lighting, tons of little effects that in a pixel art game you don't look for nice lighting or good looking drop shadows or whatever, but here we've spent a lot of time with some very subtle ambience on the characters, and there's also lights. You can see some rim lights on the characters and their shadows underground. All those little details that you wouldn't have in a pixel art game, but that you would have in an animated TV show, for example.
That's interesting, because the video you were just showing, it's got a filter applied. It looks great. Street of Rage 2, this first level looks so good. But it has a filter applied, so it's a little bit hard to see the pixel. But basically, how the collision detection works is not different from the old game. I don't have the code of the old game, but it's really the same kind of how we treat inputs and how we treat collision is kind of the same.
Mm.
Yeah, I wonder the thing about that, if you want a little bit of history, We've tried using some perspective on the ground, and we quickly realized that it just couldn't work. So we've got exactly the same kind of perspective as the old one, like very isometric, for gameplay reasons.
In terms of the old games, did you ever try reverse engineering them?
We reverse engineered them not in the sense of decompiling the code, but in the sense of looking at it frame by frame to see how it works. So how it worked is that every time I implemented a new feature, like a weapons or the destroyable object that you punch, we try to. I look at it, how it works. I play it in different situations to see how it works. For example, when you grab a character, how they move relative to each other. So we do reverse engineering, and also we did a lot of it for AI, for how the character moves. So we don't reverse engineer the code, but we really look at how it worked in previous game and try to break it to stay still, to see how enemies move when you stay still. Like you see how this Garcia run with a knife, and you just saw with Wysing now, when you just jump toward him, he stepped in the depth of the perspective. So we reproduce this behavior. That's a very subtle behavior, but it's very interesting in terms of gameplay. You see how when you walk toward him, he always steps. So we had help from players, from players that played a lot of the original games, that know them by heart and know all these subtle differences. And so yes, that's how we reverse engineer them.
That is interesting. And I suppose that leads to another question in terms of like the actual old games. In everything that's been revealed so far, Streets of Rage 4 looks like it takes a lot from Streets of Rage 2. And, like in terms of the enemy movements and all that. And the question is, how much from the other Streets of Rage games are in the DNA of 4 here?
Oh yeah, so we take really a big inspiration from Streets of Rage 2, but we have some stuff that we take from the others. Yeah, you have something to say?
No, not precisely, but we did look at all of them for sure. There's a lot of great ideas in all of them, but I think the second one is first the preferred of the community, but there's lots of things that really was nailed down correctly.
Yes, we're trying to have the same feelings, the same gameplay feeling of Streets of Rage 2, but there are going to be details that were in the first and third one that are going to be introduced. So, for example, some enemies that were in the first and the third one are going to come back. So it's also in terms of story. It's not a follow-up. It's of Streets of Rage 2. It's a follow-up of Streets of Rage 3. Also, for example, some detail maybe I can say. For example, in Streets of Rage 1, you could take a bottle and smash it on an enemy, and then you have a bottle hilt. That's more powerful. So a hilt? No, it's not a hilt. It's a broken bottle. And so that's kind of thing we're going to take it back. So it's going to be details and enemies from the first one and the third one. And is there gameplay ideas that we take from the third one?
Probably, but it's hard to tell.
But yeah, enemies mostly. Yeah, enemies from the third one that's going to come back. But yes, we wanted to keep the more slow and deliberate gameplay that is on Streets of Rage 2, that feels more strategic.
I can understand that. since, as you mentioned, Streets of Rage 2 is the generally preferred one, although there is actually quite the fierce debate between Streets of Rage 2 and Bare Knuckle 3. And it's specifically Bare Knuckle 3 and not Streets of Rage 3, but...
Yeah, the Japanese version that is more better balanced. And I know people that prefer the first one, so that's nice. That's what's very nice about this franchise, that you have people that like the first one, the second one, the third one. They all have good reasons, and I think the three of them have a different gameplay feeling. Personally, I like the first one a lot. Because it's very simple, it's very bare bone. I think it feels like a kung fu movie. And that's the one that feels the most like a traditional maybe Jackie Chan movie. And but yes, it's it's a choice we made, and yes, that's very funny to see all these debates.
Indeed. I'm like, honestly, I always had problems getting into Streets of Rage 1. I think that's because I played it after Streets of Rage 2. And it always just kind of felt like the rough draft version of Streets of Rage 2. You know.
Yeah, it's true, rough.
Like, yeah, your mileage will vary on that sort of thing, though. Though I suppose a question I have in regards to Streets of Rage 1, and I don't know if you're able to answer this at this point. Did you give was there any consideration given to having the SWAT attack in Streets of Rage 4 here?
We've thought about it. We think about it. We may have, I can't say anything, but we think about it. We know it's kind of iconic, so... but I can't say.
Yeah, it's iconic, but it's really, really different to everything else in like the franchise. You know?
Yes.
It's actually quite interesting to see how they did, how it evolved the big attacks. Like in the first one, it was that clear screen thing, and then they realized, well, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work that well to give it only once per level. So then in the second one, they decided to eat some of your health in exchange for powerful moves. And then the third one, there was a timer added to that. It's interesting to see how it evolved, how they kind of struggled with this concept.
Yes, and so it was important for us to do something different in Streets of Rage 4 in terms of special attacks. So that's why, and I think that was expected. So it changed, because it changed, like you said, Bo, it changed in all the games. So we'd have to change for Streets of Rage 4 and have something again different.
And if there was something that was an area of improvement, it was certainly that. And I think we've nailed it really, really well.
Yeah, how special attack work. I don't know if you know how it works in Streets of Rage 4, where maybe we can tell it.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so in Streets of Rage 4, so when you do special attack, you lose life. But on your health bar, the life that you lost because of the special attack becomes green. So it's life that we call internally banked life. So it's at risk, and you can, when you hit enemies, you can get this life back. But if you take one hit, you lose all the green life. So it means that the more special attacks you do, the more risk you take, but you have a chance to get it back. So that's the new mechanic we introduced, and we also added the star moves. So that's like ultra attacks that are impressive, that are kind of like the clear screen, but that goes into the combo system better. Because you can combo before and after these attacks. So that's attacks that you have to pick up stars on the ground to do them. So that the strategy of them is to decide when you want to use it in your stage. Do you want to use it when there are a lot of enemies, or do you want to use it for the boss? So that's it. So it's two kind of special attacks.
Well, that's good to hear. In the sense that there is going to be, new stuff in this game. It's not just leaning on all the old stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that leads me to Cherry Bomber. She is a completely new character, at least in terms of being a character. Now I've seen like in online previews that she's described as playing as like her uncle Skate. Is that accurate?
She's not playing as Uncle Skate. She has some similarities as Skate. So,
Well, how is she similar and how is she different?
so she's similar in she can run.
Yeah.
So that's she has a dash move.
Jumping on the head of the guys, I think it was a skate move.
Yeah, that was a skate move, but we extended it. So she can jump on the head of enemies. Like Skate, you could, if I remember well, if you grabbed enemies from the back, or if you grab them and press A, you were on the back of the enemies, and then you could punch the enemy several times. So she can do that, but we extended it so you can grab enemies by just jumping on them. So you jump on an enemy and then you grab him, or you can grab it on the ground and jump on him, and then you have different moves. So yes, that's the move she takes from Skate. But she has more. She has more. She can bounce on enemies. She has her guitar that allow her to have finisher moves, stronger finisher moves. So it's trick characters that can jump on enemies, run everywhere, very agile, but also that has powerful finishers.
Well, sounds interesting. And how to frame the next question here? It's in regards to Character 4, which has not been revealed yet. I suppose my question is, when do you think we'll be able to learn when Character 4 is going to appear?
It's gonna be in the following months. So I can't say anything about other playable characters because it's I'm not allowed by the marketing team. But yes, it's we're gonna reveal other playable characters in the following months. It's gonna be in terms of months.
Okay. And also on the subject of characters, we've had Shiva show up as a mini boss or a boss. Once again, I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but it's like, could he be a playable character?
I don't know if I'm authorized to talk about that.
Well, we can say that it could be nice, but it hasn't been done in the engine in the game right now.
Yeah.
So we can tell anything.
We can tell anything. Shiva is in the game.
Okay. Duly noted. Anyway, I suppose getting to a aspect of this game that has been heavily hyped, but is the music. For those who don't know, Street Race 4 not only is going to have the original composers returning, but a host of, I hesitate to use the word guest composers, but there are other accomplished composers. There's 5 composers on this, and I suppose my question to you guys is, how are you implementing the tech behind the sound? Is this going to be in modern fidelity standards, or is this going to sound, like audio that came from a Genesis?
Like we said at the beginning, we're using Wise for the music and all the sounds. We're for sure aiming not to have a chiptune retro thing, just like the graphics. it's a game that it's going to be out in 2020, and it should feel like it. We're not going against the DNA of the game in terms of style, but that's kind of up to the composers. But so far, what we can take out is that we're not going into the chiptune style for sure, but keeping in mind the kind of style of music that fits the license.
Yeah, it's not gonna be yes Genesis sounding also, but we in terms of the implementation we try to experiment with dynamic music, with music that evolves when the stage evolves, and that we're shooting for very varied soundtracks that you don't hear two times the same music, so that you can play the game campaign like you listen to an album where the music evolve during all the game. So that's what we're shooting for, because I think Streets of Rage 2 mainly people play it like they listen to an album. So it's a music album. So yeah, that's what we're shooting for.
Well, that's good to hear. Because it's a modern game. It's got modern graphics, and it should have modern music and modern kilobits. Look, nothing against the Genesis, but it's kind of low quality for 2019.
Yeah, and it was nice because it sounded rough. But I don't think we should try to do exactly the same. Like everything, we try to be faithful, but also to evolve it. Yeah. And having a soundtrack that sound like a Genesis, how could you make it better than Streets of Rage 2? It would have been impossible.
And that was the idea at the time. It was a killer soundtrack for a Genesis. It was sounding almost as good as CDs at the time. But that was the idea of doing something great, the best they could. So we're just being faithful and doing exactly the same today. Not the same in using the same technology, but in doing the best we can.
Understandable. I'm like, once again, the soundtrack is maybe the most anticipated part of this game now.
Yeah.
Like I've seen people who just like not even interested in the game. They want to like actually just purchase the soundtrack to this just because of the name value behind it. Yeah. So anyway, so we've talked a lot about the old games that were, but on the inverse, have you given any consideration to the Streets of Rage 4s that were not? Like, did you not necessarily like looked at old code, but did you ever look at the old Streets of Rage 4 attempts and see anything that you would like to do in your Streets of Rage 4?
We've looked at the history of Street of Rage and the spin-offs and all things for sure, at least just for personal interest. But the one we really played the most was probably Streets of Rage Remake. When we were like halfway in development, we spent some time really playing it and realizing that we've got the same idea as they had for like some little things here and there. But in terms of inspiration, really, like I don't know what to do. I'm gonna look at how they did in this. Our reference really was the real Streets of Rage more than the remakes or.
And
spin-offs.
Did you? Maybe we missed something about. There's not a lot of information about the failed Streets of Rage 4 on the internet, or maybe we missed it.
Well, it depends on the Streets of Rage 4 or the Streets of Rage sequel we're talking about. Like, for example, one of them did actually come out, but under a different name.
Yeah.
And that game is Fighting Force. Fighting Force was actually conceived as a 3D Streets of Rage 4, but things didn't work out, so they released it as its own thing.
Was for PlayStation or PlayStation 2?
PlayStation
1. Yes. I remember this one.
Mhm.
So okay. So maybe we should play it. I remember, I think, playing it at the time, but it's pretty old right now. Yeah, you see the cop car. Yeah. Okay, it's just interesting.
Yeah, like I said, this is a thing that's tried to be a thing for a couple decades now. And in fact, it's to me, it's kind of amazing that we are finally getting Streets of Rage 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think it's maybe it needed it was the right time because it's we see a comeback of the 2D games, and maybe it needed to be at that time where when 3D is not a feature anymore, and it doesn't have to be 3D to be looked as a true sequel. Maybe.
Indeed. I'm like, yeah, given how like a lot of 3D brawlers ended up, it's like it's like Final Fight Streetwise comes to mind. It's like, but yeah, it's like I'm glad that that the Streets of Rage 4 is coming in the package that it is.
Thank you.
Indeed. Anyway, so this game is in development for all the major consoles and PC, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. How is that workload being handled? Like, are you working on like the PC version, and are other groups working on like the consoles, or is it all in house?
No, how it works. Is that we're working on the PC version as the main version because it's a platform on which the tools run. So it's better to have it as the main version, and we have external teams that do the ports and that works on the console versions.
Sounds pretty typical.
Yeah.
Especially since like, how big is your team?
In the core development team, so we have 2 programmers, 2 artists, and 2 level designers right now. We had some help at some point with more people, but mainly the core team is 5 people. So it would be totally unrealistic to do the ports ourselves.
Of course. There have people who have tried this. It was a workload, let's say.
yeah, that's a big workload, and even now with 2 programmers, it's a lot of work. But with the ambition we have in terms of variety in the levels, like it's a lot of work to do a beat 'em up that doesn't feel repetitive. You have to add a lot of things to vary the enemies, to vary the situation, to tune them. So it's a lot of work.
Now, digging deeper into the console versions, I'm not sure if you can talk about these particulars yet, but like, is the game going to be enhanced for the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 Pro?
I think the game is conceived. All the assets, the art assets, are conceived to be in 1080p. So it's really optimized for this resolution. It's not very useful to have bigger textures than that, because when it's a drawing, it doesn't look even better if it's a higher resolution.
We've played the game with 4K screens, and honestly, we don't see a difference.
It's a little bit better on 4K, so I guess it's gonna look a little bit better maybe on PlayStation Pro and Xbox because it's a little bit crisper. In 4K, it's a little bit better, but not a lot. But the game is gonna be in 60 FPS on our platform, of course, because it's required. it should be. It's just no reason it shouldn't be, and it has to be. But it's going to be 60 FPS on our platform, and maybe it's going to be 4K, but it's not going to be a big difference. It could look a little bit better, but not incredibly better.
Duly noted. And in regards to the Switch version, is it going to be the same version with the same resolution as the others?
We will try to have. We're trying to have it as close as possible. It's a little bit early to say now. Maybe we're gonna try it to have it look as close
That's good, yeah.
as close as possible. Maybe we have a little bit less memory.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that we should be optimizing right now, like big, huge, very blurry textures that we don't need in any console. So we could like reduce by 8 times or something like that, and the Switch will benefit a lot from it. And in the other consoles, it will only reduce loading time, for example, but not much more. It's the kind of things that I think we'll be looking into a lot to optimize things that are just good to be optimized. That otherwise would be a waste.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. Hopefully it all works out. Because the Switch has its quirks, not just in terms of clock speed, but in terms of architecture that have tripped up others. But I don't see this game having a major problem running on the Switch, since it's still a 2D brawler.
It's a truly brawler. It should work okay. Yeah. It's big. It's big textures, but there are not a lot of them at the same time. There's not 100 enemies at the same time on the screen, so that
right. It's not Pikmin. Zeroing on the PC version, is this game going to be for Windows only, or are there Mac and Linux considerations as well?
Maybe later. I don't know what we did. What did we announce at the end? It's the end of the trailer. It should be. No, it's an old trailer, so we don't have.
I think we said PC. No, we said Windows. I think we said Windows. We haven't looked much into Linux or Mac OS, but since we're on FNA, it shouldn't be that much work to port.
It should work. I think it's gonna. We may port it. Usually, when there is a Linux and Mac port, it's done like 2 months after the game is out, and it's really technically it should work with no problem. Maybe it would work. It will work on Linux without any porting work to do, because it's based on SDL2. So I think SDL2 should work. SDL2 game should work on Linux with Proton or without problem. So, but yes. So typically, it's stuff we do after the game is out.
I get why that would be the case, because it's like Mac and Linux have very small user bases compared to Windows.
Yeah. Sorry for them.
But it's a question we ask everyone, because some people do have the consideration to make a Mac or a Linux port, or both.
It's a great thing to do. It's nice to support, especially the Linux crowd that has been really out of games in the past. It's a nice move. At the same time, marketing-wise, it's not the best place to put your bets. We've got so much to do that better to spend our time on more
Used
yeah,
platform. Yes.
yeah, on useful stuff.
Right. And let me see. I'm presuming this game is coming to like Steam and GOG and all that.
We can say. I think it haven't been announced, so I don't think we can say anything about that.
And there's a new store opening every 2 days, so it's hard to tell. Maybe it won't be the same stores in a couple of months.
That is interesting and potentially contentious. Like,
yeah, it shouldn't be contentious what you're gonna do, but I can't say so.
well, I mean, I can say that if this game gets announced for, say, the EGS, it's gonna be, it's gonna be filled with passion. Let's say. I'm like, and that it's like I just do not want people to issue death threats over a choice of storefront. Like, you laugh, but it's happened. Like,
yeah, it's just another exe that you launch just before launching your game, so it's not that big, I guess. But for some people, it's big. Maybe it's big because they're friend list or something like that.
It's deeper than that, but it's a whole can of worms that we really can't go into right now. I'm like, anyway, we are just about out of time anyway, so I'll see if my colleagues here have any last questions for you.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I've never been super into beat 'em ups, but this one at least looks pretty neat. So.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
So thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. Now, I would like to thank you both for taking time out of your schedule and being here with us. I'm not exactly sure when you're shooting to release this. Like I'm assuming 2020.
It's gonna be in 2020 for sure, but we don't have a precise release date announced.
Yeah, I recall that. And I'm assuming pricing's still up in the air as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we might have you back on the program like around the time of release, so we could actually get super into things without having details obscured.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah,
cool.
But until then, the game is Streets of Rage 4. It's coming to all major consoles and PC. Look for it in the new year. And that's about it for us today. Be sure to tune in on Sunday for our usual review session. And until then, I wish you good gaming.
Thanks.
Bye.